Hey guys, Panzer J back here. Um, we are at the end of Operation Casino Royale. So if you guys uh, watched Boston Bruce's Japanese turn, 11.4, at the end of it, he went ahead and surrendered as the Japanese. And it looks like the consensus among the guys is that we're going to go ahead and call this. The Allies are pretty far ahead. Um, Bruce feels the Japanese are kind of in a tight spot and kind of getting closed in from all sides. And then I know Italy is probably about to receive some of the wrath from the Allies with all those British and American units moving into the Med. And then as the Soviet Union, I don't feel like I can ever fully recover from that one turn where I lost Moscow. So we have decided to call the game so it'll end in an Allied victory. So I'm just going to go over the game a little bit, not a whole heck of a lot here, and then I wanted to talk about one particular rule that's kind of bothersome to me. But as far as, and I'm not going to cover what the rest of the guys did or whatnot in here. I'm just going to focus on the Soviet Union here a little bit and what I want to try to do. A good game had by all. Again, had a lot of fun playing with these guys, so I'll let them. I'm not sure if they're going to be posting wrap-up videos or not. We'll see. But like I said, let's just get into the Soviet Union a little bit. So, kind of, this is the first YouTube war I played as Russia. So, and as the Soviet Union, you're, in essence on your own. You don't have any partners. So all the decision making was left up to me. So I was kind of learning as I go a little bit as the Soviet Union. So I kind of thought early on that in the last YouTube war, Rich, aka Silk, as the Japanese had went into the Soviet Far East and had taken a bunch of territories off the Soviet Union. So my first thought was that I didn't want to allow that to happen. So I planned on, once I was at war with a major power, I planned on railing over one of my minor factories over into the front lines there with Japan so that I could produce units right on the border there with Manchuria and start applying some pressure to Japan. So, but then also besides, hopefully, being able to hold on to my territories if Japan and I went to war also, there's some Soviet victory points there in the Far East. So Manchuria and I think the South Sakhalin Island it is, I think, or is it North Sakhalin? And it's one of those islands there. So there's some victory points to be gained as the Soviet Union there in the Far East as well. So I wanted to get that minor factory there on the front line, start producing some units. If I happen to get lucky enough with the CCP, have them kind of work on the Japanese together. I mean, as most of these YouTube wars progress, Japan, finds itself facing a lot of different enemies. So if you can kind of get lucky with the CCP on those early warlord roles, then you can make life pretty difficult for Japan. So that was kind of my thinking there. And then also I wanted to rail a second minor factory down to Transcaucasia, again on the front lines there with Turkey and Iran. Was going to hopefully go into those two countries. And having the factory right there, getting units right there on the front line would have helped. As far as in the north, I stayed away from Finland. I didn't want to. I figured what I would do with Finland is maybe late game, depending how things developed. I would go into Finland. I didn't plan on going in there at all early on because I didn't want to. Once Germany and I went to war, I didn't want to flip those units and those territories to Germany. So I didn't want to give him another avenue to come at me. Now, obviously, Global War 36 enthusiast did take Finland himself, but at least he had to fight for it and whatnot. So, so my plan there was just to stay out of Finland altogether, and then hopefully defeat the German invasion when it came, and then maybe start mid game, maybe 2/3 into the game. If the tide was starting to turn against the Axis and the Allies were starting to apply pressure, I would then maybe get a force up there in Karelia and Leningrad, and then maybe go into Finland late game. So that was just kind of what I was thinking there. Also, I was converting 2 of my infantry each turn to motorized infantry. I kind of had that as a plan from early on. I was thinking to myself, well, not only is there obviously a lot of territories and a lot of distance to be covered in Russia itself, I'd rather have units that can move 2 spaces than opposed to just 1. But then again, if in the later portion of the war I can, kind of go on the offensive, those 2 move units, 2 territory move units are going to be helpful there in like Poland and Romania and whatnot. So I wanted to convert over as many infantry as I could to motorized infantry and just give myself a mobile strike force to hit back at the Germans when they came into Russia, or at the very least to be able to get out of the way and avoid some of the German attacks once they came into Russia. So I think I ended up converting over like maybe 12 infantry to motorized. And then my thinking again was, as far as tech, I was going to go for advanced artillery pretty quick. And then my idea was to pair up, once I completed that tech, the advanced artillery pieces with the motorized, to have them tow them and give me a little bit of offensive punch there. So that's where I was kind of aiming for with the Soviet Union, but things didn't quite work out that way. That one turn, I can't remember. I think it must have been turn 10. I think when Global War 36 enthusiasts took Moscow and took all my money. So that really set me back. You lose $53 a whole turn worth of production. You're not going to survive as the Russians. Not survive. I shouldn't say not survive, but you're not gonna be much of a factor. As you can see, I'm kind of fighting off the Germans, but I'm just. It's not so much a question of is Russia going to survive, I think, at this point, but I'm just not really close to like having pretty much any of my victory points. I was going to probably be able to contribute to the Axis defeat. The Allies and I were working close together throughout the whole game, so I was going to be able to contribute to preventing an Axis win. But I don't think that the Soviets could win. Like I said, none of my plans. You got to get Turkey down there, try to get a victory point down there. I haven't been able to add anything to that minor factory down there, just because I've been in such a defensive mode. Then, like I said, I lost all that income on that one turn, so not even close to doing anything in Turkey and Iran. Again, I'm just on the defensive, trying to hold on to Leningrad, so I'm not even remotely close to building up anything to go into Finland and get that victory point. In the Far East, the Allies and I kind of got Japan here on the defensive, especially in China with the KMT and the CCP. But again, I'm not, I wasn't able to put any units in the Far East the last couple turns, really. So I think that if the game would have went on, the Allies are definitely going to win. I think I might have been able to, produce a decent showing for the Soviet Union in terms of like territory gains and where they would be standing militarily. But like I said, I just don't think that I would really be close to getting, hardly any of my victory points. It's just, that one turn just put me so far behind. Not a whole lot I could do about it. So that's kind of overall with the game. So I wanted to talk about a little bit about the one rule here that's been kind of eating away at me. It's been 2 games now that this is kind of tilted the game, and that's here in Turkey with the Turkish Straits. So so historically, in 36, I believe, and I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, the Montreux Convention. Montreux, I believe it is. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but anyways, in essence, Turkey went ahead and closed the straits to any nations at war. Okay, so any belligerents they closed the straits to. But and that sprang from the fact that obviously, Turkey, a new nation born out of the old Ottoman Empire at the end of World War One. They wanted to stay neutral. They didn't want to get dragged into another war. So that came about in 36, and in essence, it said that we're going to deny access through the straits to any nations at war. But it really went farther than that. It wasn't just simply cut and dry, like if you're not at war, you have free passage. That isn't what the Montreux Convention said at all. There were things like a tonnage limits on what of the ships that could pass through. Things specifically like aircraft carriers were denied. Again, certain warships were denied, and any vessels exceeding a certain tonnage or multiple ships exceeding an X amount of tonnage were denied, and that's even if you weren't at war. Okay. It also went into to talk about the Black Sea powers, which obviously are Turkey here, Russia, Romania, and Bulgaria, the four nations that border the Black Sea there. So it also put restrictions on nations that were non-Black Sea powers. So other than those other three nations there, again, more restrictions were placed. So in essence, your Turkey is not going to allow warships to pass through the Turkish Straits, even if the nations aren't at war. It's just not going to happen. It's not historically. It's not that it historically didn't happen. It's historically that it's impossible. It wouldn't have happened under any circumstances. So obviously, in these board games, things are going to happen in the game that didn't actually happen in World War II, right? The Axis win, Global 36. They obviously didn't win World War II. The Germans land in England, take London sometimes. London never fell in World War II. The CCP evolves to a major power. They never evolved to a major power until after the war. I've seen the Japanese land in Africa. They obviously never landed in Africa in the war. All those things. So, and I'm sure you guys have seen, dozens of other, things, whether it's cities falling or nations being defeated that didn't actually happen in World War II, right? But at least there's a possibility. Maybe if a certain battle went a different way, maybe if a world leader made a different decision, you could see those things happening, right? There are possibilities that those things could have happened. But in this case, again, I go back to it. It's a historical impossibility. Okay, Turkey didn't and would not let warships through the Turkish Straits. It just wouldn't happen. So the fact that that's allowed in this game is kind of mind-boggling to me, to be honest with you. I don't understand why it's being allowed. And it has been pointed out to the designer, and it's been said that, well, that is what the intent is, okay, to allow them through. So I have a big problem if you are having a game not just based on, but following an actual historical event, but you're having something in there that's a historical impossibility like that. It makes no sense to me. So, and one of the rationale, I believe, has been like, well, gameplay. We want to see, we believe it adds, gameplay or whatnot. And that, I just don't see how you can even look at that and think that works either. So the first strike against it is again is the sheer historical impossibility of it. Okay, so the second thing is gameplay. But we'll talk about that in a second. So let's talk about what actually happened real quick in these last two games. Okay, so Italy basically threatened Russia with war here. Okay, and let's see how easy it is for the Italians to put together a force and apply that pressure to the Russians. So the Germans have to use their blitzkrieg by turn 10, I believe. Okay. So if, and Global War 36 did a smart thing. It was interesting that he held off using blitzkrieg until he went to war with the Russians and then used it on the Soviet Union. He didn't use it in France. So if a future, Italian-German player wants to do that again, how could he set things up with Italy? And again, it's fairly simple and fairly easy. So Italy collects 10 IPP a turn. Okay, so they need to have everything on the board here in place by turn 7. Okay, then on turn 8, they go 1, 2. Okay, then on turn 9 is when they can threaten the Soviet Union, and that opens the door on turn 10 for Germany to do the blitzkrieg into Russia and support the Italians. So 7 turns. So by turn 7, Italy needs to have everything in place here in Italy. So at 10 IPP a turn, that's $70 Italy will have collected at that point. Okay, so they already start out with, I believe, 2 fighters and a tactical, at least 1 fighter and a tactical. So let's say they buy, and they already have plenty of infantry. So let's say with those 70 IPPs over those first 7 turns, they buy 3 naval transports. So that's $7 a piece. That's $21. They buy 3 Marines. That's another 12. So that's 33. And let's say they do a fleet carrier. And that's, I believe, that's 15. So that's what, $48. So they could have those units on the board easily by the end of turn 7, because again, they're collecting 70 and they're spending 48. Okay, so then on turn 8, they can come over. They already have the infantry and the aircraft in the initial setup. So they can come over 1, 2 here on turn 8 with 3 naval transports, with the 3 Marines, 3 infantry, the fleet carrier with a fighter and a tactical, 2 fighters, whatever combination they want to use. Okay. Then on turn 9, they say to the Soviet Union, okay, we're going to come through the Turkish Straits. Do you want to declare war on us? Okay. Now, if Russia elects to declare war, the Turkish Straits close and Italy can't move through. So it's like, this game is like accepting partial Montreux Convention. You know what I mean? They're like paying lip service to part of it, but not the whole thing, which makes it even more absurd. But anyways, regardless. So then the Soviet Union has 2 choices. They either declare war, okay, and the Turkish Straits are now closed, so Italy is stuck here in M7. They can't get into the Black Sea and threaten those southern Russian territories. Or the Soviet Union doesn't declare war, Italy moves in, and now the Transcaucasus, North Caucasia, Donetsk, Kuban, Taurida, maybe the Crimea are all vulnerable, okay, to Italian assault. And in these last YouTube wars, both things have each thing happened, a different thing happened each YouTube war. So the first one, Global War 36 enthusiasts came over here with Italy. Hambone was Russia, and I don't think he had some of these southern territories defended either at all or with much. So Global War 36 enthusiast said, hey, Hambone, I'm coming in. Do you wish to declare war? So, and Hambone, obviously, with self-preservation in mind, realized that if Italy came in, he's going to lose Transcaucasia, he's going to lose North Caucasia. So there's $8 worth of territories, not to mention that now the Germans can just, on their portion, their next turn, before Russia gets a turn, they can land a unit here in Italian-controlled Transcaucasia, and now Turkey aligns to Germany. So that would have created all kinds of issues. So Hambone said, I'm going to go ahead and declare war. Okay. So that now closes the Turkish Straits. So Italy didn't actually get in and invade Russia. Okay. That's the good news. The bad news is because Russia declared war on Italy, as long as Italy doesn't declare war on another nation the rest of the game or lend lease to Germany or Japan, the Allies can't touch Italy. Nothing. There's nothing they can do to the Italians. Absolutely nothing at all. Okay? So Italy's basically a full-fledged member of the Axis. They're fighting in Russia. Their entire production can go to fighting the Russians because they can literally leave Italy completely empty. And they have no fear that the Allies can do anything whatsoever. And that's exactly how the last game played out. I think at one point Rome had like 2 militia, and there might have been a fighter in northern Italy. I mean, just ludicrous, right? I mean, Italy's fully involved in the war, and the Allies can't touch them, can't do anything. Down here in Africa, it didn't matter that the British had overwhelming forces. Italy could leave, I mean, they did have to worry about the Free French, but, nothing that the Allies could do in Africa. So Italy basically pocketed their African victory point and Rome as a victory city. So there's 2 victory points that are locked up for the Axis, right? Without even having to defend Italy against the Allies whatsoever. So that completely threw the balance of that game off. I mean, it was totally absurd, to be and frustrating beyond belief. And the thing is did Russia really declare war on Italy? I mean, yes, technically they did, but if someone, holds a gun up to your head and says, hey, look, I'm going to pull the trigger unless you cut your left hand off, you go ahead and cut your left hand off. Did you really choose to cut your left hand off? I mean, it's ludicrous to think that Italy could make that kind of threatening maneuver with a fleet here, all these units, and then just to simply close the Turkish Straits, the Russians have to declare war. I mean, it's not like the Russians were attacking Italian units. It's not like they were convoy raiding them or going into, had plans on going into Italy. They just simply did it to close the Turkish Straits. That's gamey in and of itself, So it's like, yes, Russia declared war, wink, wink, on Italy. I mean, it's just totally absurd. And the Italians in that game had an aircraft carrier, a battleship. They had all kinds of ships there that, again, just it would not be allowed to pass through the Turkish Straits. So that completely wrecked that game, and if you think that was the height of absurdity in that game, it actually wasn't. So the Italians, again, they can't be attacked by the Allies. So again, what about unbalance in that sense that, Italy's pocketed its 2 victory points. It's fully engaged in fighting the Russians, but it doesn't have to worry or spend any money defending Italy. How is that fair? How is that a balanced gameplay? It's absolutely not. But what I found to be the most absurd thing, and again, there's many absurd things about this rule, but the height of absurdity, as far as I'm concerned, was the Italians moved units into France. Okay? France, the active alliance member with Britain and the United States. Yeah, that country. They moved military units into France, in essence, helping Germany to keep France occupied and under Axis control. Okay? The United States and Great Britain are in a life and death struggle trying to liberate France, a member of their alliance. and Italian units move into France, and that isn't considered an act of war that the Allies can respond to? Are you kidding me? That I mean, if you thought common sense went out the window earlier, it's we've completely jumped the shark here. That is beyond ridiculous. That in and of itself is an automatic. I mean, God forbid the Italians lend lease a AAA to Germany to fight in Russia. That's an act of war. The Allies can jump on them, but the Italians can move in and help the Germans defend the home territory of an alliance member, and that's not an act of war. Okay, yeah, whatever. So it completely threw the last game off. It was ridiculous. And then also think about it from the German perspective. Most games, when Italy does come in, they're obviously not strong enough to hold off the Allies themselves. So German units have to be sent to Italy. You can see in this game that the Germans are already starting to send some units down there. And that helps to withdraw German units from, let's say, the Eastern Front against Russia, or in Europe against the Allies. Well, in that game, because Italy couldn't be attacked, Germany didn't have to send a single unit to Italy, not one unit. So all of their, well, not all, but a lot of their production all went to France to defend against the Allies. And I had created a pretty strong army here in Normandy, but I was never able to break through and never even really had an opportunity because the Germans just constantly pumped, turn after turn, all these units railed and bought and moved into France. And I had no chance to break through. And one of the reasons why is because the Germans didn't have to send any units to Italy because Italy was completely protected against Allied attack. So again, you're talking about balance and fair play. Please explain to me where that is. It's ridiculous. Okay, so then on to this game. So then, obviously, I played as the Soviet Union. And I wasn't sure that the Turkish Straits, deal was going to be made again. But, I was preparing myself for it. And in my head, I'm like, you know what? There's no way I'm going to declare war on Italy because the game is just going to devolve into the same thing as it was last game. The Allies can't touch Italy, and it's just going to be a bunch of bullshit. So I'm like, okay, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to take my medicine if it comes to that and let them come through. So, and again, the Italians, I believe it was turn 9, said, hey, look, I'm bringing a naval transport and some, I think it was one infantry. Do you wish to engage? I had the Soviet fleet here in M7. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do it. Let them come through. And they landed here in Donetsk Kubin, which was unoccupied. Okay. So, not worth anything. Doesn't seem like a big deal, just a single infantry. The problem was, and I give credit to the Axis for this, they had this well coordinated, is that the next turn 10, again, Germany goes first in the sequence, followed by the Soviet Union, so the Soviets didn't have a chance to take Donetsk Kubin back. The Germans did their blitzkrieg move, and that's how they took Moscow. Because at the end of the first impulse of blitzkrieg, planes and paratroopers landed here in Donetsk Kubin, and that gave them the range 1-2 to hit Moscow. So even if, as Germany, you save the blitzkrieg for their Soviet Union, all you got to do is look at the map. There's no way that even with blitzing units, the Russians or the Germans can take Moscow, unless Italy already has a Russian territory for their planes to land. It's impossible. They just can't reach. Okay, they're not going to, even with the blitzkrieg, they're not going to be able to reach Moscow. Okay, the only reason why this maneuver succeeded is because by the Italians having Donetsk Kubin, the German planes could land there at the end of the first impulse, and now they've got the movement spaces to get to Moscow. Because without that, because at the end of you is the Blitzkrieg maneuver, you can't count territory that you captured on the first impulse as far as for places for planes to land and whatnot, right? So if on the first impulse, for instance, the Germans take southern Ukraine and eastern Ukraine, the German planes can't land in eastern Ukraine and then on the second impulse move. They can't count territories that were just captured. So the planes still got to originate from, let's say, central Romania or Poland. Okay, that's most likely where the planes are coming from. So it's impossible for the planes to reach unless the Italians have taken a territory and given the German planes that landing spot, and that's exactly what happened. So then, on the German portion of the turn, again, at the end of the first impulse, they landed in Donetsk-Kuban, and then a couple paratroopers, and I think 3 fighters maybe, or maybe 3 paratroopers, 3 fighters, something like that, went into Moscow, and Moscow fell. So, and again, we're talking about gameplay and fairness. How is that fair? It completely destroyed the balance of this game. Not saying the Allies don't win regardless, but you've basically, in one turn, and you're halfway at the point of the game, you've already eliminated one of the alliances from realistically being able to win the game. I don't care what you say. The Russians losing a whole, production, $50-something, you're not going to recover. I mean, it's not like the Russians have been making $50 a turn and spending that for the last 8 turns, and they've got this huge force on the board. They already, are kind of behind the 8 ball in terms of income and forces to begin with. And then you're going to completely eliminate one of their, turns worth of production. You're not going to recover from that, at least in terms of recovering to the point where you can be a viable threat to win the game. And you also, you lose tech, you lose tech rolls. So there's that as well. Now, you can say to yourself, well, Panzer J, why didn't you defend Moscow better? Or why don't you simply just defend these southern Russian territories so there's no place for the Italians to land? My argument is, why should I have to? It's a straight up bullshit move to be able to come through the Turkish Straits in the first place. So why should Russia be punished and have to spend money and resources that they really don't have just to guard against a complete garbage move? It shouldn't be allowed. So why are we the Russians already start behind the 8 ball in so many ways in this game, and now you're adding yet another burden onto Russia. It's ridiculous. You shouldn't have to, as Russia, defend against that. It shouldn't be allowed. And even as far as, trying to defend these southern territories from the Italian invasion, well, I already showed how it's absolutely easy to put together 3 transports and a fleet carrier with a couple of planes. So what do you think it's going to take for Russia to defend Transcaucasia, North Caucasia, Donetsk-Kuban, and Tarita, let's say? Those 4 territories. You're talking about the Italians offloading 3 Marines, 3 infantry, and 2 fighters, let's say. It's going to take more than a couple of militia. I mean, you're almost not going to defend it, even if you wanted to. It's going to take infantry units. It's going to take a handful of militia. Those Marines can soak up the casualty. The fighters can inflict casualties. What are you going to do? Move your, the 2 fighters Russia starts the war with down there? Seriously? And that's just the minimum that Italy can bring. That only gets them spending 48 of the 70 IPP through 7 turns. They could easily add another transport and another Marine and an infantry. So if Italy wants to make the play, it's going to be almost impossible for Russia to not lose one of these 4 territories to Italy. And then once they lose, at least Donetsk, Kuban, or Tarita, now the German planes can hit Moscow. So what are you going to do? Or maybe if you load up Donetsk, Kuban, and Tarita, you lose Transcaucasia instead. Oh, that's great. Now on the German portion of the turn, they land a unit there, and now Turkey aligns. I mean, it's placing such a burden on Russia, who isn't that strong in early game to begin with, and again, all from a bullshit move that I just it's I don't know, it's just not right. It's completely unfair. I think I really do. Um, you know, you're talking about, Russia, especially in the first half a dozen turns, not collecting that much money and now forcing them to spend it on like militia and infantry just to stack up southern Russia so that Italy can't land. And again, I don't think there's a scenario where you can completely eliminate the idea of them landing anyways. You know, I mean, because a lot of Russian players obviously like to save up most of their money for the turn that they're at war, and they get that dollar discount on infantry class units. Well, now, with this scenario, you're forcing Russia to buy militia at 2 and infantry at $3 a piece, prior to them going to war just to try to hold on to, the southern Russia there to prevent Italy from coming in. So it just, it's, I don't see how you can say it's fair and balanced by any stretch of the imagination at all. So I don't know. It's these last two games have definitely left a bad taste in my mouth for sure. Um, I don't know. I mean, as far as my opinion on that, it just shouldn't be allowed. You can't have uh, ships pass through there, and do that bullshit move where, hey, Russia, I'm coming in. Do you want to declare war so you can close the straits, or I'm going to come in and wreck you? It's just it's ridiculous. It really is. So that's just my opinion on that. I'm going to be stepping away from Global War 36 for a while. I'm not sure how long. Like I said, I really haven't had much fun these last couple of games. The frustration level has been through the roof. It's almost been like, I come home from work and then it feels like work, getting through these turns to continue to play the game. I've just been so frustrated. So, definitely going to step away for a little bit. I've got Global 14. I might try that. Also, Global 39 was the first global game that I got introduced to, so I might break that out. I know some of the designers that have been working on that over the last year or so have done some improvements and some additions to Global 39. So maybe try out Global 39. Again, I've got 14 set up in my basement, so maybe get involved in some Global 14. As far as 36, like I said, I don't know. Maybe down the road, but I think that at least in that one specific rule would have to change, or at the very least, I would have to have an understanding with the group of guys that I'd be playing that as a house rule, we're not going to allow it. I just don't think, and it has nothing to do with being Russia and losing Moscow. I mean, yeah, I was pissed off I lost Moscow, but I just don't think it's good for the game, regardless of who's the Russians. As Italy, I wouldn't do it. It was several YouTube wars ago. I can't remember exactly which one it was. I brought Italy in, and I had them pretty viable until the end of the war. Rome didn't fall. I can't remember if maybe southern Italy had been invaded. I know I had lost all my African territories, but I still had the Italian Navy on the board. I still had Rome and northern Italy were heavily defended. I think I had the Allies locked out of the Mediterranean actually in that war. I had built a bunch of German ships here in southern France once I had Vichy, and I was proud of that. Italy's not easy to play. They obviously have crap for an economy, not a lot of units, and they're usually easy pickings once the Allies get rolling mid to late game. But again, I might have lost all my overseas possessions, but the fact that I had Italy locked down so much and at least contributed Rome for my victory points, I was proud of that. I think also that was the game where I had a bunch of Italian units land over here in Syria, and they made their way up to Transcaucasia. I got to Transcaucasia through, I think it might have been Turkey to the Soviet Union, or maybe it was Iran to the Soviet Union. But I had a huge Italian force up there too. So, there's definitely, you can definitely play Italy and make them viable. Maybe not to the point where they're a major power, but I thought that was a lot of fun, and I got a bunch of enjoyment out of playing Italy that way. I just don't think, and this isn't a knock on anyone who does it, but I just because again, it's clearly allowed. It's not against the rules. No one's breaking any rules. I just think it's super gamey and again, a complete historic impossibility. So how is it allowed? But that's just my 2 cents. So we'll see. Hopefully, we'll have some content for you guys to watch down the road. I appreciate all the support. And like I said, we're not disappearing. We're just gonna, give Global 36 a rest for a while, and maybe some other people will come to the same conclusion that that's kind of a broken rule in this game that needs to be changed, and we can get it changed and improve the game. We're always looking to improve. No one's perfect. We can always make adjustments and make improvements. So we'll be seeing you guys down the road, and take care, and hopefully continue to follow Hambone and Silk and Boston Bruce and Global War 36 and Sarge's Shellhole, the newest addition to the group. Those guys put out great content, and I'm sure they will continue to put out some really competitive, good YouTube wars. So make sure you guys continue to follow them, and we'll see you down the road.